Well, before the March for Life has even got underway here in Edmonton, counter-protesters have arrived. They are blaring very loud and very often profanity-laced music. And keep in mind that this is an event that largely consists of families, young children coming and standing together peacefully in a support for peace, and they are being met with this. One would certainly hope that NDP MLA Janice Irwin, among some of these other counter-protesters, would have the common sense to not have profanity-laced music blaring with children around.
Happened and has been thrown to our work.
Well, we certainly tried to speak with some of the counter-protesters. They're either unwilling to speak with us or not willing to come on camera at all. We certainly want to be able to share both sides and both perspectives of this story to see what the tension here is fundamentally. We also tried to speak to NDP MLA Janice Irwin, who had done some work recently that actually received some bipartisan support on Bill 17. Unfortunately, she was unwilling to speak with us, but we are going to continue to remain here on location throughout the day, see if we can continue to have some conversations with people on both sides and bring you this story while very other media outlets are here on location.
Pro-life! 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 Pro-life!
So I'm now joined by MLA for Peace River, Dan Williams. You just gave a bit of a speech to the crowd. I wanted to first ask you, we are seeing a counter-protest among the counter-protesters. NDP MLA Janice Irwin, of course, I think both of us would agree that we support people's right to protests. Do you feel that perhaps the profanity-laden music and some of the content not necessarily appropriate for a protest at the legislature?
Well, I don't know. Protest is free speech. Of course, they're welcome to make their point as best they can. As far as I'm concerned, I encourage everyone to be joy-filled, to be charitable. That's what I talked about. And I find it's often the left that accuse us on the right, or maybe myself being pro-life, of bringing American-style politics to Canada. But it couldn't be further from the truth when we look at what's happening today. All I want to do is have a thoughtful, good discussion with folks. I want to be able to advocate for my views, which I'm deeply committed pro-lifer. Thousands of Albertans are the same, as you can see today. Many came out. So I'm just sticking to what's important to me, which is continuing to advocate for those preborn children and for the vulnerable in our society.
If you are facing a choice between life and death, choose life. Practice hope. Trust. There is another path. God is still the good creator.
So I'm now joined by Stephanie Finlay of the Wilberforce Project. You had the opportunity to address the crowd here. First off, just what are the vibes like? What's the energy like down here at March for Life this year?
Right. Yeah, it's peaceful. It's joyful. It's a really great positive turnout, and at least on the pro-life side, it's very life-affirming and very positive.
And what do you make of the counter-protesters who are here?
Oh, well, I think they're well-intended but misplaced. I understand that they want to be protecting women, but I think they are not recognizing is to the great harm that abortion does to women, and so and they've unfortunately been a bit disruptive. So that's as a woman, I am choosing there to speak. It would be interesting if they would respect my choice to do so. So that's a bit frustrating, but they're here and they have a right to be.
And so what for people out there who may be on the fence on abortion or are undecided or haven't been out to these before, what's the core of your message to those people?
Oh, if you're undecided, I was too for quite a while. And what was helpful for me is I looked at a lot of the embryology statistics. It was alarming to know that at 22 days, the human heart is already beating. I was floored. In fact, I didn't believe it. I had to look it up and start understanding what that life really is like. And then I think, ignorantly thought that abortion would be very rare, very few circumstances. And when I heard the volume, 100,000 in Canada a year, that was staggering. So I started understanding that other life, that other body inside the woman needs to be respected and cherished, and it has rights as well. So for me, that's what helped kind of tip me to the other side. And if you tip over to that side, I'd say, come out, this is a beautiful day to be part of.
And how much of a challenge you feel it is? We were at the Conservative leadership debate last night of the 6 candidates, federally we're speaking, of course. Only one was willing to say they're pro-life. It certainly seems to be a position on the margins, maybe not in society at large, but within the political spectrum. How challenging is it to be a pro-life politician?
Well, I think it's important that my myself and colleagues of mine that have these convictions thoughtfully, charitably, but confidently articulate them. And coming out to this is a good example of that. It allows others to know who share the same beliefs, who are a little afraid, saying, I feel like everyone's against me, to say, oh no, there's someone who also has these same beliefs. There's someone who's thoughtful on how he's articulating or she's articulating the pro-life position. And I think that's important. And it gives everyone else in society the ability to say, okay, I'm allowed to have this discussion and this position.
So I'm now joined by Joseph Scow, MLA for Cardston, Siksika. You were attending a bit of the March for Life here, a bit of a different format this year. I just wanted to get your opinion. Clearly there are some counter-protesters there exhibiting their opinions. Clearly there was a little bit of an escalation going on there, but I think things have calmed down a little bit. How important do you think it is that people are able to maybe set aside emotions and have important conversations on this and have respectful discourse within society?
I think it's really important. We can always disagree without being disagreeable, but what I'm focusing on today specifically is the March for Life and what a positive experience this is. We've had 2 years of not having this event, and so I'm so grateful to see it here on the legislature grounds again. I've seen a number of my own constituents drive all the way up from down south to visit this. It's that important. It's important to me as well, and I'm grateful to attend.
And were you speaking to people today? Is it people's first March for Life? Are these people that you're seeing out here year after year?
I think it's both. I think you're seeing people here for the first time, recognizing how important life is and celebrating that. And then you're seeing people who have been here every time for decades, so long as this March for Life's been around. And that gives me a lot of hope, because not only do you have the legacy members who have been coming for years and years, but you're bringing on new young pro-life Albertans who care about this important issue and care about family values.
We've also seen very much this sort of the term, and your colleague Dan Williams mentioned earlier, the sort of Americanization of politics. Certainly the Roe v. Wade conversation in the United States, which we've seen riots, protests, things escalating beyond what we would consider sort of peaceful discourse. Do you feel that conversation is sort of impacting the March for Life today, or impacting the pro-life movement in Canada?
I don't think it's necessarily impacting it today. Even the MC had mentioned, this is not in response to any decisions from other courts or other jurisdictions. This is about life and celebrating life. And so I think that's what we're keeping the conversation focused on. I know I certainly am. As I walk through that crowd and I shake hands with people I've never met before, we definitely find common ground on family values, supporting life. And that makes me so happy to see that right here. And frankly, I hope every year this event gets bigger and bigger, and I look forward to attending it every year. Thanks.
So I am now joined by Camcote of Pro-Life Guys, the podcast, as well as the Canadian Centre for Bioethical Reform. Maybe if you could just share a little bit first off about what the mood has been like that. Clearly there's been some counter-protests and stuff, but generally what has the mood been like down here at the March for Life?
There's been a ton of energy. People are excited to be back together talking about the abortion issue and being able to engage and share their worldview. They've done a wonderful job interacting with the counter-protesters. They've done a great job representing the issue for life, and they are fired up to move forward, engaging more people on the abortion issue.
And what is the core message for people maybe out there who've never been to a March for Life, who don't know what you guys are espousing? What's the core of the pro-life message?
Core of the pro-life message is that all humans deserve human life. We know that human life begins at fertilization. You can find that by Googling, when does human life begin? Human life begins at fertilization, and all human beings deserve the right to life, the right not to be killed as an innocent human. And we need to know that. We need to be able to share that with grace and compassion and clarity, so that our neighbors, our friends, our family members, and random people in our community can embrace that worldview as well.
And finally, these marches have been taking place for years across Canada, around the world, in fact. There is very much a sort of growing pro-life sentiment if you look at polling. Do you think that there is any potential, or that there is on any horizon the capacity for those folks who don't know, abortion legal for all 9 months in Canada? Obviously that's federal, but as far as any reform on funding for late-term abortions or anything like that from the Jason Kenney government?
Well, I think it was really exciting to see just in the legislature last night a vote. Ironically, politics makes strange bedfellows. The NDP and the Conservatives voting together on giving bereavement leave to mothers who have had stillborns or miscarriages, or importantly had abortions. And to me that speaks to recognizing the dignity, the intrinsic dignity of any single life. If any one person has dignity, it means every single person has that same dignity. It's the kind of thing that can't be scaled up or down. We all have to have it. And I think that this Bill 17, that's going to pass, hopefully in the next a week or two here, will pass unanimously from both sides. And I think it's a big step forward. probably the most pro-life legislation I'll have the chance to vote on ever. So I'm very excited about that.
So I'm now joined by Alyssa Golov. Right now, first off, you had a chance to address the crowd. There are obviously some protesters here kind of attempting to disrupt things. But overall, what was the mood like? What was the energy like among the people attending March for Life today?
I mean, the March for Life, the mood is always energetic. It's exciting. There's a lot of momentum going on. And I'm glad that the counter-protesters are here because they're actively trying to drown out women's voices when it comes to the abortion issue, just showing how anti-choice they are because they only support a woman's right to abortion and no other choices. And we're here to provide and present the fact that there are life-affirming choices for women besides abortion.
One final question then, just because you brought up Bill 17 there. We were hoping to ask Janice Earn. We're not sure if we'll have a chance to talk with her, however, but the fact that they're acknowledging bereavement for the aborted baby seems to be sort of a tacit acknowledgement that there is a life lost, or that that you are bereaving a lost baby. How does that intersect with having abortion on that bill, where someone is perhaps, and includes elective abortion, someone's electively receiving an abortion and then receiving a leave for bereavement?
Yeah. I mean, my position as someone who's pro-life is I'm deeply committed to being compassionate. And that means for whatever circumstances led someone to lose that child, stillbirth or abortion or elective, as you said, or whatever brought them there, I think it's important to recognize the dignity of that life and that it's difficult to go through that. It is very difficult to go through that for any of these women who've lost their pregnancies. So it's really important for me to have the law of the land reflect the reality of that loss. And I think that's what happens. And I'm not going to try and opine on how the left and the NDP got themselves to support that, but I'm very happy that they are, because to me it's a very, very clear statement of the dignity of that life. And I mean, we don't bereave the loss of any other operation or anything else to clip your toenail. What's important is that it's a life, right? And that to me says a lot, and the law should model the truth.
While the crowds gathered for the March for Life weren't actually able to go for the more traditional long march through the streets of downtown Edmonton in a show of solidarity with the unborn, they did actually manage to do a bit of an impromptu lap around the legislature building itself before the day wrapped up.
Well, this year's March for Life is wrapping up. It was by far one of the smallest March for Lifes that I have seen, and I've been coming for quite a few years. It's unclear as to whether that's because of COVID-19 or a variety of other reasons, but certainly a smaller crowd. No lack of action with the counter-protesters interacting. After the initial sort of back and forth, other than some shouting and some loud music, it remained pretty civil. As you can see behind me, folks are starting to clear out and the event is wrapping up. We will certainly be here next year to check this out, see what kind of crowd turnout there is, and see what kind of interaction there is with the folks. But we had great opportunities to talk to some people today and garner their perspectives on this important issue. And as always, I want to thank you all for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Souse. Well, as always, Rebel News is one of the only outlets out here telling the other side of the story and reporting on the stories that you have interest in. From what we could see, we were the only media outlet here in Edmonton at the legislature covering the March for Life this year. No one else was here, despite hundreds of people gathering to share their pro-life messages. We were here, and we are getting out to remote stories like no one else. And if you want to support that important work we're doing, you can do so at rebelfieldreports.com.